Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. We're often drawn to the flashy headlines, right? The next big tech thing, the latest gadget. But today, we're doing something a bit different. We're kind of pulling back the curtain on an unsung hero. Something
Oh,
so fundamental it literally forms the backbone of our modern world. Yet you might not even think about it much. We're diving deep into wire rod. Sounds pretty humble, doesn't it? Almost deceptively simple. But really, don't let that name fool you. This stuff is everywhere. Think about the steel skeleton in the buildings where we live and work, the mesh under roads, springs in your car, those power lines bringing electricity, and vital bits inside the machinery that keeps whole industries running. So if you've ever wondered about the hidden gears of the global economy, the actual physical building blocks holding things up, then yeah, this deep dive is definitely for you. Our mission today, to really unpack the global wire rod market forecast to 2033. We're using some really fascinating insights from cognitive market research. We'll look at its current value, where it's headed, and maybe more importantly, what its growth patterns tell us about global development, about urbanization, and the future of industries all over the world. It's actually a surprisingly revealing way to look at how the planet's economy is evolving.
it really is. What's so fascinating, I think, is how just one seemingly basic industrial material can be such a critical indicator, almost, granular, for tracking these bigger economic trends. We'll be trying to connect the dots between this foundational product and the really powerful forces shaping things, from massive construction sites in, say, developing nations to those huge electrification projects bringing power to new places. You'll quickly see that understanding wire rod, it's not just about steel. It's really about getting a handle on global progress, the foundational needs of a growing, modernizing world.
Okay, so before we jump into the numbers, maybe for anyone who's not super familiar with this exact term,
hmm
let's quickly define it. When we say wire rod, we're not talking about like finished coat hanger wire or the tiny wires in your phone, right?
No. Exactly, yeah. That's a good clarification. Wire rod is actually, it's a hot-rolled, coiled length of steel, usually round, typically somewhere between, say, 5 and 19 millimeters in diameter. It's the primary sort of intermediate raw material for a huge range of downstream products. Think of it like the basic steel noodle that then gets processed further. It gets drawn down into thinner wires for everything from electrical cables and barbed wire, or it's cold drawn into that high strength wire you see in concrete reinforcing mesh, or, processed into fasteners, bolts, screws, even things like springs. It's just super versatile and indispensable building block.
That clarifies it perfectly with the starting point for so much. Okay, brilliant. Now let's unpack this with some global figures. How big is this market that underpins so much? And what kind of growth are we looking at over the next decade or so? Give us the big picture snapshot.
Sure. So the global wire rod market back in 2021 was valued at a pretty significant $164.7 billion.
Okay, so not small change.
Not at all. And the projections show a steady kind of moderate rise to about $183.2 billion by 2025, which is, just around the corner. And then a more substantial jump heading towards $226.7 billion by 2033. So when we crunch those numbers, it works out to a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR, of about 2.69%.
2.69%.
Yeah, it's a remarkably consistent upward trend. It really indicates fundamental sustained demand.
So what does that tell us then? What's really driving this kind of reliable growth for a material that, okay, it's been around ages, it's not exactly a new invention. What's keeping demand so strong, even while we're talking about AI and space travel?
Well, yeah, this growth isn't, it's not accidental, and it's definitely not speculative, not driven by fads. It's underpinned by several really practical fundamental drivers. First, there's just the unwavering demand for steel products generally, right? And wire rod is a core part of that. Then you've got the continued pretty aggressive expansion in construction activity
Yeah.
globally.
New cities, housing.
Exactly. New cities, commercial centers, huge housing projects for growing populations. But it's actually a bit more nuanced than just construction. We're also seeing this monumental push for electrification projects. And for, an informed audience like ours, this isn't just power lines. It's really two things happening. You've got the ambitious upgrading of aging grids in developed countries. often needing specialized high-performance wire rod for transmission lines, urban infrastructure, that kind of thing. And then you have the huge task in emerging economies bringing power for the first time to millions. That demands vast amounts of more standard wire rod for completely new distribution networks connecting homes.
Okay, that's a really important distinction.
Yeah. And finally, there's the gradual but, persistent modernization of infrastructure everywhere. Bridges, ports, you name it. It's truly a bellwether for industrial and societal development. It reflects real-world physical growth on a massive scale.
That distinction on electrification really highlights the complexity, doesn't it? Even in what seem like simple drivers. It's clear this material is absolutely critical for building the future, quite literally.
Yeah.
Okay, those global figures really set the stage. But as we know, the global economy isn't uniform. It's a patchwork of different growth stories. And that's probably really clear when we break these numbers down by region. So where's the market truly taking off? Which part of the world is leading the charge?
Yeah, absolutely. If we connect this back to the bigger picture of global development, economic activity, some regions are clearly out front. While others show that more stable, sustained demand we talked about, the regional breakdown really tells a story about where the world is while investing its resources and building its future. Let's start with the Asia-Pacific region. It leads in both sheer scale and pretty impressive growth. The market there is projected to jump from about $60.5 billion in 2021
Wow.
to a massive $86.5 billion by 2033. And this growth is happening at a robust CAGR of 3.15%. It's really the dominant engine for the global wire rod market.
Okay, Asia Pacific. My mind immediately goes to the two big ones. China and India, I'm guessing. They must be pushing those numbers up. Their scale alone.
You're absolutely right. China is still the largest single player in Asia Pacific. Its market's set to reach around $25.9 billion by 2033, growing at about 3.34% CAGR. And that's heavily supported by, ongoing urbanization, but also these massive state-backed infrastructure mega projects that just seem continuous, connecting cities, expanding industry. But here's what's really interesting. India. It's actually growing even faster. Its CAGR is 3.86%.
Faster than China.
Yep. Expanding from just under $10 billion in 2021 to a pretty significant $15.4 billion by 2033.
Wow, that's actually striking. India outpacing China in the growth rate for this
Yeah.
really crucial material. What does that acceleration tell us about the stage they're at, in their industrial and urban development right now?
Oh, it speaks volumes. India's acceleration, it's fueled by rapid industrialization, sure, but also a truly extensive construction boom, particularly housing, commercial spaces, and this aggressive expansion of its power grid. They're meeting the demands of a rapidly growing middle class, expanding manufacturing. This isn't just growth, it's like a tangible sign of an economy in this furious phase of physical expansion.
Right.
New factories, power grids reaching villages, huge housing projects. It signals this foundational, almost terraforming level of development that other metrics might only hint at.
Terraforming. That's a fantastic way to put it. It really captures the scale.
Yeah.
Any other standout players in Asia we should be watching?
Yes, definitely. Japan and South Korea, being more established economies, they maintain pretty steady mid-range growth, reflects their mature but still, robust industrial bases. However, Singapore and the broader Southeast Asia region, they're actually showing some of the fastest regional expansions, growing above 3.6% CAGR. That's fueled by foreign investment, developing manufacturing hubs. Taiwan also shows remarkable resilience in its market. While Australia, maybe by comparison, has more modest growth, about 1.74% CAGR, perhaps due to, smaller population, more focused infrastructure needs. So it's a diverse picture. But overall, Asia-Pacific is where the foundational building blocks are being laid down at an incredible pace.
Okay, so if Asia-Pacific is the biggest by volume, where are we seeing the most dynamic growth, the fastest acceleration in percentage terms? Where's it really kicking off?
That would have to be Africa. This market is set to, practically explode. It's expanding from a relatively smaller base, $2.38 billion in 2021, up to $4.85 billion by 2033. Now, this represents the highest regional CGR globally, an astonishing 5.93%.
5.93%.
Yeah, this isn't just growth, it's like a transformational surge. It really highlights the increasing role developing nations are playing in driving global demand and shows where significant future investment in basic infrastructure is expected.
Wow, nearly doubling in just over a decade. That's really remarkable. What are the specific mega projects or national plans, say, in South Africa, Nigeria? What's consuming wire rod at that kind of rate?
Right. Within Africa, South Africa is growing particularly strongly, 6.57% CAGR, projected to hit $1.89 billion. Nigeria also very impressive growth, 6.2% CAGR. For both, it's primarily fueled by significant infrastructure upgrades. We're talking new ports, expanded rail networks, large-scale urban development, plus, substantial construction investment, both commercial and residential, to support their fast-growing populations and economies. And the rest of Africa is also contributing strongly, around 5.33% CAGR, showing broad growth driven by similar development needs across the continent.
Okay, moving across the Atlantic, South America, the market there is also showing pretty healthy expansion. It's growing from $12.6 billion in 2021 to about $18.6 billion by 2033. That's a healthy CAGR of 3.48%.
Brazil usually looms large in South America, economically speaking. Is that the case here too, or are others making bigger moves percentage-wise? Brazil definitely is the largest market, still is, projected to go over $7 billion by 2033. That reflects its, broad industrial base, ongoing infrastructure needs. However, Argentina actually leads in the growth rate for the region, nearly 4% CAGR.
Okay.
Yeah, reflecting rising industrial output, maybe a surge in construction activity, perhaps catching up after, slower periods. Chile, Peru, and Colombia also show healthy growth, all above 3% CGR. So it indicates pretty widespread development and investment across the continent in sectors that rely heavily on wire rod.
Okay. What about the more established markets like North America? Still big players, I assume, but is their growth trajectory maybe more muted? Infrastructure largely built, less focus on brand new builds.
North America still holds a very significant share of the global market, absolutely. It's growing from $49.1 billion in 2021 to $64.2 billion by 2033. But as you suggested, at a more moderate CAGR, 2.12%. The United States, predictably, dominates the region, projected to reach $52.1 billion by 2033. And this reflects its consistent, substantial use in both advanced manufacturing, the automotive, machinery production, and ongoing construction, though maybe more maintenance, upgrades, selective new builds, rather than that terraforming scale we talked about elsewhere.
Right. Less terraforming, more upkeep, and targeted expansion. And its neighbors, Canada and Mexico. Similar pattern, or are there distinct differences there?
Not entirely similar, actually. Canada is growing faster than the U.S. rate-wise, a 2.90% CAGR projected to hit $6.75 billion. That could be linked to ongoing natural resource projects, related infrastructure, perhaps. Mexico shows steady growth, 2.29% CAGR, reaching $5.37 billion. Driven by its manufacturing sector, obviously its proximity to the U.S. market helps. So yeah, while the U.S. is the biggest chunk, its neighbors are contributing meaningfully, often with slightly different dynamics driving their expansion. Okay, then there's Europe, another major contributor, growing from $30.7 billion in 2021 to $40.8 billion by 2033 at a 2.3 billion percent CAGR. So similar overall pace to North America, roughly. That's a mature market, yes, but still very active.
Any European powerhouses we should particularly note within that, or any surprises on the slower end?
Germany certainly stands out, reaching $9.51 billion by 2033, with a CAGR close to 3%. That's largely driven by its strong manufacturing sector, ongoing industrial modernization efforts. The UK and Spain also expand pretty steadily, above 2.5%, showing consistent demand from infrastructure, housing. However, France and Italy, they grow more modestly in comparison, perhaps reflecting slower economic growth or maybe more settled infrastructure needs. And Russia's growth is notably minimal, just 0.52% CAGR, really stands out within Europe.
Yeah, that's very low.
It could indicate a more mature infrastructure needing less new build, absolutely, but also likely compounded by the impact of, well, recent geopolitical factors redirecting investment and altering trade flows for key materials like this.
That's a crucial point. It really highlights how external factors, geopolitics, can dramatically sway even these fundamental material markets.
Absolutely. And the rest of Europe collectively maintains about a 2.33% expansion, signaling generally balanced, if somewhat varied, demand across other nations' industrial and infrastructure sectors. Okay, finally, let's turn to the Middle East. The wire rod market here grows somewhat modestly, from $9.25 billion in 2021 to $11.56 billion by 2033. That's a 1.66% CAGR. Saudi Arabia leads the region, projected at $3.09 billion, clearly driven by its ambitious Vision 2030 projects, diversification efforts. Turkey and the UAE follow with steady but not exactly explosive growth, linked to their established construction and manufacturing sectors. Egypt and Qatar, on the other hand, record relatively slower expansion within the region, maybe experiencing temporary pauses or shifts in large-scale project timelines.
Okay. So after this incredible journey through the numbers, the regions. What does this all really mean for you listening, whether you're just curious about global economic trends or maybe you're actually involved in the supply chains that rely on this foundational stuff?
Well, I think this deep dive into the wire rod market, even though it's about a seemingly niche product, it really paints a very clear, compelling picture of these broader economic forces at play. We've seen how that relentless march of infrastructure modernization, the momentum of construction booms, expanding industrial activity, how they're driving steady expansion worldwide. And while established regions like North America and Europe maintain these stable, mature markets with consistent demand, Asia-Pacific remains the dominant growth engine, with India showing that particularly impressive, almost terraforming momentum we drift.
And Africa emerges as the fastest growing region, just showing exceptional potential for future development, future investment. It's almost ironic, isn't it? In an era where we're constantly talking AI, virtual reality, quantum computing, here we are talking about coiled steel rod. But this seemingly low-tech material tells us so much more about the fundamental physical progress of our planet than, almost any Silicon Valley headline.
Indeed, it's truly revealed something profound, I think. That even these elemental, often unseen materials, they can serve as incredibly precise barometers for the pulse of the global economy, tracking these massive shifts in development, urbanization, industrial ambition across continents. The sheer scale, the fundamental importance of wire rod to critical industries, building bridges, delivering power, it just ensures its relevance for decades to come. And I think this raises a really interesting question for all of us to think about. As global populations keep urbanizing, as economies across the developing world keep industrializing, what other hidden foundational materials will become these critical bellwethers for future growth? And what surprising regional shifts might they reveal next? Something to, mull over as you go about your day and just observe the world literally being built around you.
Exactly. There's always a deeper layer to explore, isn't there? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and stay well informed.